Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Your Next Business Bestie. I am Jen Weber Hart, your host. This podcast is all about connecting you to the people I think you should know, either because of their story or their business or a little bit of both. And I am super excited to welcome this week's guest, Roseanna. We have kind of a crazy story. So, hi, Roseanna. How are you?
Hey, good. It's good to be here.
I'm so excited. This is my first recording with a guest, so
Yeah,
extra special for it to be you. So
absolutely.
for our listeners, Rosanna and I actually went to high school together in Mesquite, Texas, longer ago than I would like to admit, but that's okay. And we actually were not friends in high school. We didn't
Really.
dislike each other at all. It's just we didn't run in the same circles. Our boyfriends did, funny enough. They
Yeah.
were in a band together, which is still funny to me that we didn't hang out, even though they hung out all the time. But
hmm
whatever. And so fast forward literally 13 years to 2020, which a lot of us lost things in 2020. So I think it's really funny that you and I found our friendship in 2020. So
hmm
Rosanna was headed out to Colorado for a dog training conference, or was supposed to be,
Yeah.
in May of 2020, I think it was. And we had talked over the years. I had gotten my dog Kismet and reached out, but we hadn't like hung out or anything by any means. I was living in Maine. So Rosanna came to visit, and really the rest is history from there.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even know how many times you've come to visit now. So one, let's see, once in 2020, I think once in 21, once in 22,
Yeah.
and
And then
then
like
four times last
four
year. I don't even
times.
know.
Yeah. Four times last year.
With two more trips planned this year
Just couldn't
already.
stop.
I so we have epic times every time you come to Colorado. Eventually, I
Yeah.
will convince you to move here.
Uh,
Uh, but
Working on it.
Good. Rosanna is a dog trainer. Her company
Yes.
is called Better Pups. And like I said, when I got my dog Kismet, who actually, ironically, today is 7 years since she came home. So that's really
Ah,
funny that we're recording this
I
today.
love it. It's
I love
destiny.
it. I reached out to Rosanna off and on just for some tips. And honestly, Kismet's like the best dog I could have
Oh,
ever
yeah.
asked for.
Yeah.
Now I have Asteria, who is a bit of a hot mess. So,
And her
she's
terrible
getting,
teens.
oh my goodness. The anxiety is real, but that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, Rosanna, why don't you tell us why did you become a dog trainer? Because I know you
Yeah.
didn't go to college to become a dog trainer. So if you
Sure
want to give us
didn't.
a little bit of your history.
Yeah. So, like any high school kid, whenever you're kind of deciding, what do I want to do with my life? You don't really know. So I had a family full of teachers. And so I was like, well, education sounds like the way that I can, have a stable career. And, it's pretty straightforward schooling. So I went straight, dove in, went to Eastfield, got to stay local, and then went to Commerce, stayed local, and got my degree in elementary education. During my residency, which they do a year-long residency, you are in the classroom working with the kids and the teachers, really, really immersive program. I decided this was not my route. This wasn't my passion. This wasn't what I wanted to do. I loved the time I had with the kids and I loved the education part, but I just didn't feel like it was for me. Growing up, I have always been ridiculously obsessed with animals, any type of animal I could get my hands on. And my mom was a huge supporter of that. And of course, dogs. Like, who doesn't love dogs? So
Right?
I loved that I got to grow up having access to all these animals and dogs. But when I got my first husky back in 2013, 2014, it was a game changer because I had had small dogs my whole life. Well, adopting this husky really got me interested in dog behavior. I knew that a bigger dog was more of a liability per se because they're just bigger. So I dove deep into that and the husky breed in general. So I knew that was a passion. So I kind of did some soul searching, and then I one day got an itch and did an internet search for dog training companies, and I fell into a couple of interviews. So one interview was with a company called Karma Dog Training, and the other one was, I believe, Bark Busters. So one thing that a lot of people don't know about is there is a culture war in dog training, And the two that I was interviewing with were complete polar opposites. And at the time, I wasn't aware. So, interviewed with Karma, loved what they were about, loved their philosophy. Obviously, the other company was not my vibe, not things that I believed in or stood for. So I went the Karma dog training route, and it was a very sink or swim company. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't necessarily know getting into dog training. It's not as structured as the education system where you get certified and you go into the field. Dog training is very unregulated. So
That's so scary.
luckily,
Like as a
yeah,
pet owner, like just gonna
yes,
pause there for a second. Like because especially I think about a big thing in Colorado, and it probably is everywhere, I just hadn't paid attention, is these camps that you send your dog off to for
yeah,
weeks at a time. And I find that mildly terrifying that there's really not a ton of any regulation. I mean, insurance,
no,
sure, they should be insured. You hope they're
yeah.
insured.
And
But
they're
like
not
you
even
send
required to do that.
that's insane to me. But also, I just have
Yes.
to say, because we weren't close pre 2020, thinking of you with a small dog, like every time we talk about how you would love to have a Cavalier, it blows my mind because I only think of you with Huskies. Like, I
Yeah.
cannot imagine you with a small dog. But anyway,
Yeah.
keep going.
Huskies definitely became part of my identity, and I get
For
slammed with the
sure.
TikToks and the reels and just anything husky related, which I love. I mean, my girls are amazing and I
Yeah,
lucked out, but yeah. Um so basically whenever you enter dog training, you really have to find yourself. And I fell in with some really great mentor trainers, and they steered me the way that I seriously am proud to say that I'm a dog trainer who practices these methods. And I've come a really long way behavior wise because anybody can do basic obedience, but really getting to the root of dog body language and the brain chemistry and things like that is really where you can shine when you are helping people understand their dog. Um, so that's kind of how my journey started. I worked for Karma for a while, and how they work is they dish out cases around the nation to trainers, and you got to go your own route. You got to form the relationships, you got to book the private sessions, you got to, really know your stuff, independent learning, and find people that you can shadow and learn from. And so doing that gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of resources to feel confident enough to branch out on my own. So that's how Better Pups was formed. I kept getting referrals, and, it's very appealing to make all the money instead of a percentage of the money when you are doing the work. And so I had a really good support system, and we got this going, and I've been going ever since. We are almost training at 10 years. So
that's
I love it.
insane.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
insane. 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think so when I was creating this podcast and I was like, well, I want to interview all my friends that have businesses. So I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out like what that would look like. Obviously, stories are a big part of what I do. Like I help business owners share their stories in authentic ways. So I wanted to figure out a way. I was like, okay, well, like Roseanna, for example. Not all my audience is going to be in Dallas and be able to hire Roseanna for dog training, or Colorado, where she's eventually going to live. But I think beyond everything, beyond our friendship, beyond you helping with my dogs, even my ex's dog, where we hear
Mhm.
about anxious dogs, but
Yeah.
until you and I really talked about Lyric, I hadn't actually equated that to dogs having anxiety, right? Like it was more of a
Yes.
personality trait rather than like a syndrome that we associate with humans.
Right.
But beyond all of that, I think is this community that you have in the dog training world. Like,
Yeah.
and the fact you own, like, you don't really work with aggressive dogs, right?
Not so
Overall,
much. No.
but you have resources for people. And like
Absolutely.
this,
Yeah.
there's this huge community of people where you all align in how your approach and your beliefs, but you have this network of people that you can refer to as well, which I think is so cool. So how
Yeah.
did that community come to be? Was it through
Yeah.
your background or
Honestly, it's really crazy the way that it worked out, because I went to a class at a facility. I had heard raving reviews of this woman who was top notch. She's done everything aggression and behavior and reactivity. And if you don't know what reactivity is, it's basically when your dog barks at a stimulus. So if you're walking your dog and it's barking at other dogs, or if you have a dog that just barks at people, or whatever the trigger may be. So it's something that's very commonly dealt with, and people 100% are like, what do I do with this? But Karen Deeds was the know all be all. And I was like, I got to get in this class and introduce myself and really form a relationship or see where this goes. So I went to that class, and that was the stepping stone to really immersing myself into the positive force free dog trainer community. And so through knowing Karen and becoming really close friends with her, we I was introduced to other trainers, and we have a Facebook group full of like-minded methodology trainers. I mean, that's our philosophy is
Are they
we
everywhere, like
stand by.
nationwide?
So this is just a DFW group,
Okay.
but obviously there are force-free mentality trainers all over, but we don't necessarily have a nationwide Facebook group, but there's
Cool.
organizations that hold conferences. So that conference that I was going to go to in Colorado and just
Just
stumbled into
kidding.
our friendship because COVID had other plans. That was one of those organizations. So like I said, it's not regulated. So we have a bunch of what people like to call the letters groups. So it's all acronyms. So IABCC, I think, is one of them. But there's a couple. And so they'll have speakers, and, they'll present on different topics, things like that. But as far as community, there are some positive force free trainers who are a little more, oh, they're famous. They have podcasts. They're not necessarily someone that I can pick up the phone and be like, hey, I got this dog. What do I do with
Totally.
it? So it's cool to have reachable people that I hold in high regard, that are local. So Karen Deeds being one of them, like, in my opinion, she's a big shot. So it's an honor to
Yeah.
call her my friend. But so that's kind of how it works, and we'll do meetups, and not everybody in the group is going to be your cup of tea, just like normal people. But when you find your people, I mean, we talk every day. It's a group of me, Stacy, and Danielle and Karen, and we talk every day. And if we have a case issue or any question, it's really helpful to have that to bounce back on, so you're not just alone in the world, because it can be very isolating having dog training business in the way that it's set up. Like I said, it's pave your own way.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's kind of
Yeah,
how that goes.
entrepreneurship in general can be
Yeah.
so lonely. And that's another reason for this podcast is like it's
Yes.
interesting. I was just saying, I can't remember to who, but it's entrepreneurship. We're picking our own paths, but we're all on this different path because we
Yeah.
chose to go against the 9 to 5. But all of our paths are very different, but they're the same. And it can be so oddly isolating. Like,
Yeah.
and community within similar business types, but just in general of people who see the same shit of like dealing with the clients that nothing's ever good enough or whatever, and having
Absolutely.
some sort of community to lean on. Um, I think we should back up a step
Yep.
and have you talk about what force-free training is and how
Yeah.
you like like because I don't think most people understand that there are different types of dog training. Like
Completely.
it's not just a one size fits all, and every trainer is very different. So if you want to talk a little bit more about the mentality and all of that behind your
Yeah.
training.
So what it really boils down to is tools is a huge part of the differentiation of force free training versus aversive or balanced trainers. So, when you are a balanced trainer, you have the green light to use things that are aversive, which means shock collars, force, prong collars, any type of pain or intimidation, where you are shutting the dog's behavior down and you're really just using the technique to stop the behavior in a very quick way. So, the reason force free differs is we vow that we are not going to use pain, intimidation, fear, unpleasant things to the best of our ability. And we do not use tools in that way. We learn to utilize different methods to really get to the root of what that behavior is. Because we believe a quick fix doesn't exist in behavior. And sure, in certain instances where I've had clients who are like, well, I did this, that, and the other, and it worked. Sometimes it doesn't work, and that's where the true problems can happen. And sometimes you can get yourself in a pickle when you have just used force, 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 and you haven't really worked with the dog. So force free, in my opinion, we really focus on the relationship, the science, and the psychology of dog training versus quick results, instant gratification, and time frames. So a lot of times you will hear guarantees, and you will hear things like a 6 weeks board and train and your dog comes back fixed. And if not, we'll fix it forever. That's not really how we work, because we really like to individualize each dog, and get to the root of that dog. It's not a one size fits all with positive force retraining. And we do use food as a reinforcer. So a big argument is we're just treat pushers and we just feed, 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 feed the dog. Um, but really, that also is very important to understand, that there are some trainers who do not have the skill with food that other trainers do. So that's another thing that as you go in your profession, you really learn how to utilize reinforcers. And in the beginning, you can seem like you're just tossing food at a dog. But when you really start to understand treat delivery, mechanics, things like that. I mean, there are some dogs who are extremely food motivated, and then there are some dogs who are not necessarily. So there's a lot of elements to it. Really, the food is what a lot of people focus on, but sometimes it's toys, sometimes it's physical touch, sometimes it's play. But
Yep.
it's never going to be, I'm going to shut this dog down and I'm going to force them to do what I want. So that's kind of the biggest difference. And there's a lot of balanced trainers that don't necessarily go hardcore on the aversives. Like I said, we're all individuals. And I will say, I am the business. I don't ever train the same way that someone else does verbatim. So my avenue is always going to be different than another trainer. We might have like philosophies, but at the end of the day, I am me. And so that's kind of a cool, unique part
Yeah.
of what I do.
Yeah, I think Kismet and Asteria are great examples of what you're saying, because
Yeah,
Kismet is not food. I mean, she begs, but she's not food motivated
right.
really at all. And so but her, it was just getting pets, getting love. Like that was all she needed. And that's been, I think, the mind shift for me with Asteria is she's super mouthy and super food motivated. So like I'm
Yeah.
giving her Cheerios, all that dog is gonna turn into a Cheerio. But
Yeah.
it works. And I think a great example too was when you and I talked about Asteria running away when I call her.
Mhm.
And in the matter of a couple texts, you helped me realize that if I used a firmer voice with her, like I can with Kismet, that scared her and it was
Yeah.
intimidating. Whereas if I'm like, Asteria, come here, Asteria, like she comes right to me.
She's like, let's
And
party.
it's just right. Whereas Kismet, if I'm like, Kizzy May, she's like, yeah, whatever, mom. Like, I don't care. So it's forced me really to see the individualism between my two dogs in my household that are the same breed. So technically, a lot of people think like, oh, I have two
Yeah.
labs. They're gonna be it's no, like I have
They think
two
copy paste,
collies.
and it's
And
not.
it's not. And I,
It's
I
not at
even told you
all.
when we were getting Asteria, that was my biggest fear was learning how to train her. But
Yeah.
you've helped me see the behaviors for what they are instead of just trying to blanket this will work eventually because it worked for Kismet. Like,
Right.
no, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Um, so where's your business at now? Where do you see it
Yeah.
this year? I mean, I know you and I have talked a lot about what I want to do for your business, but
Of course.
where do you see your business this year? What do you want to
Yeah.
launch? What do you want to do?
So the cool part about my business is every day is different. It's kind of an ebb and flow of, you have your busy months, you have your slow months. So what I really am proud of is I can have a steady amount of work and not drive myself insane. So mostly what I focus on is having a manageable client load at a time. And I focus mostly on private training sessions where I go to clients' homes. And then I do walks just to keep me busy and active. And I love that I can offer the walking service because I'm so much more than a dog walker, because I have the skills for
Yes.
those more difficult dogs or situations that you can run into that the normal dog walker is not necessarily prepared for. So I like having those on a regular basis. So I'll take dogs that have reactivity issues. I'll take normal dogs. I'll take dogs that pull. Um, but I make sure that, the situation is this dog benefiting from walking? So that's another rant. Um, and then I of course do pet sitting too, where I stay in clients' homes, and that's another, service where they can be rest assured they have someone who knows what to do in a situation that's an emergency, or just peace of mind knowing I'm not some teenage kid who's going to throw parties at your house. There's a
Yeah,
professionalism aspect to it. And I have a lot of, higher end clients, which I pride myself in being trusted and respected by these people because they are trusted and respected in society. So I offer
absolutely.
that. I would love to teach some classes. I've kind of put it on the back burner. I would love to branch out nationwide and do a lot of consulting online, because a lot of people think dog training has to be in person, but you're the prime example. I haven't ever
Yeah,
put my hands on Asteria, and we've come a very long way. So, behavior consulting and dog training, I think the pandemic taught people you can do it virtually, but I think people
absolutely.
still hang on to the fact of I want to see my dog trainer in person, which I totally understand. But it would be cool to offer that, more so and utilize on online. I can reach you even though you're states away. So those are some things that I would love to branch out on. And then classes would be great. Having a manageable classroom, because a lot of people, when they think dog training classes, they think PetSmart. um, I'm not PetSmart.
Yeah,
My dog training
absolutely.
class would be set up a lot differently. So those are just kind of some of the things that brainstorming, if I really wanted to dive in, I think that those would be good avenues to just
I have so
improve.
many ideas for you. Even more ideas than what we've talked about
Yeah.
before.
I mean,
But I
having a
I
friend
think
like
there's so
Jen.
much, right? I think there's so much power. I was just thinking in the virtual training too, because
Mhm.
for me, like if I, when I would see Lyric respond well to you, but then seeing my ex try to navigate with her, he didn't feel like he could get the same results because
Yeah.
you're the dog trainer, so she did it for you, right? Whereas virtual, like even just having you on Zoom, if you watch me interact with Asteria, it's me creating that bond, and she's focused on me. So you're
Right.
putting power, like so much power into the owner's hands
Yes.
versus the in-person is great. But then there's like, okay, is she just doing it because Roseanna's here? Am I going to be able to do this when Roseanna isn't here? That type of
I
thing.
run into
Whereas,
that a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that
And
makes total sense.
that's one big part of dog training. People go into this profession because they're like, I love dogs. And at the end of the day, you have to love people. It's such a cliche
Uh,
saying, but you absolutely have to be able to navigate people, recognize when they are insecure about something, sympathize with them, and then get them feeling confident and really boosting their abilities to communicate and blossom in their relationship with their dog. What you're running into with hysteria is adolescence phase. And I can't
gosh,
tell you
yes.
enough how many of my clients feel defeated when they are in this phase of owning a dog, because they just had the people pleasing puppy phase. And then one day everything changes and you have good days and bad days. And that is really where people give up. And so that's
Um,
something that I know, and I have to really sympathize with those people and really tell them it's going to be okay. This is temporary. This is what's going on in their brain, and this is why, and talk people off of that ledge. So that's a huge skill that dog trainers really have to shine and to progress in their business. Because
and
it's
I
not,
was just
I
thinking,
am not talking at you.
right.
So
I was
that's
just
the big
thinking,
thing.
Jessa says this. So Jessa, my good friend, is the
Yeah.
owner of our vet office. And it was interesting because the vet profession has one of the highest rates of suicide.
Mhm.
And so we were talking about it because she said that so many people get into the vet industry because they love animals. But
Yeah.
what they don't think about is how they have to deal with people. So she says she has the people are her clients and the pets are her patients. So like that designation of like you have to work with the people too. And it's so similar for
Majorly.
you too. Because how I mean, I'm sure most, a majority of the issues are the people's approach. It's
Right.
them, but I do wonder as a society, we've gotten more interested in understanding how the brain works, why people act the way they do. And I think that that's coming over to pets as well. Like,
Big time.
we get made fun of as the millennial generation that we call our pets our kids, and but it, they're part of our family. Like,
Yeah.
it's not the dog that's in the backyard, it's the dog that's part of our family. And it's
Right.
interesting with you saying that because I think that has also developed to us wanting to psychologically understand them better. And
Yeah.
it
We've come a long
sounds
way.
kind of crazy, but yeah. Now
Yeah.
if that would just work for cats, you and I talked. I mean, I think Tilly and Phoebe, they're so food motivated. I still think Phoebe's a little
Yeah.
bit trained, but
Yeah.
I
Well,
need a
that's
cat
that's
trainer in my
another
life.
cool thing about what I do. Zoos follow the same methodology as us, and a big part of that is when you're dealing with wild animals or animals that are carnivores, you can't force them to do anything. So the fact that we have this mentality that we can force a companion animal that has been bred for generations to please us and work together with us is really taking advantage of their kindness. Um, so the fact that zoos utilize what I do and they can train killer whales and tigers and you name it with the same methodology. Now, granted, they also find themselves in a little bit of a how do I do this mode. Um, but it's amazing the things that you can do when you really utilize these methods. So cats, for example, of course we know they're not your people pleasing dogs, but you can find other ways to motivate and train and work with. Is it going to be from point A to point B like a dog? Not necessarily. You're going to have hiccups and you're going to find different things that each individual responds to. So that's a really cool thing. And I think 20 years ago was extreme. I mean, even 30 years ago was extremely different mentality of dog ownership. And we really, like you said, are diving into what makes these dogs tick and
Yeah.
how, how to work with our dogs instead of the dog as an accessory. We really have latched on to dogs. I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
job security, but it's
Right.
definitely transformed and evolved.
Yeah, I was just thinking about training my cats, and I mean, like they're never gonna sit on command. I don't think Tilly
They
might.
might
Tilly's
never
pretty
say
close,
never. Never say
but
never.
I mean, it's simple as like even Elena, my daughter, she knows if we can't find all the cats to shake the treats because they're gonna
Yep.
come running, and like
Yep.
we think of that as like, oh my gosh, they're just food motivated, but they're food motivated like
Right.
dogs. My cats are more like dogs anyway. But or
Yeah.
Phoebe, if she wants the faucet turned on in the bathroom, she has to nudge my face first. Like she
Yeah.
knows she has to come give me love for the water to be turned on. So
She's
like
learned a pattern.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
it's just patterned behavior, which is fascinating.
Yes.
Okay, and we can't not talk about the rest of the creatures in your life. We lightly talked about the huskies, but I happen to know what happened yesterday in your world. So tell us about just all the animals in Rosanna's world currently.
Oh yeah. So currently it's actually not I would say it is an excessive amount of one animal, but it's not the menagerie that it was a few years ago. I
Sure,
mean,
sure.
I have had every critter under the sun you can think of that's not a farm animal, thanks to my saint of a mother. So when I get something, I don't just get something. I dive into the husbandry, the science behind it, the best way to keep this animal, the diet, etc. So currently, what I have are something that people would never probably guess by looking at me. I don't fit the stereotype of the types of owner, and it's tarantulas. So
I have to say
as
they're
of
so cool.
yesterday,
I met
yeah,
them in
see,
January finally, and I'm not afraid of spiders. I'm one of those like as long like don't come into my space and we're
Great.
cool. Like you can sit on the wall. I used to have a spider that lived in my shower at my parents' house,
Yeah.
and that spider got to stay there until it came jumping at me during my shower, and then it
Yeah.
had to be relocated. But as of yesterday, how many tarantulas are in your house?
So currently I'm up to 34. And some are the same species and some are, most of them are different. I got one that is bigger than the size of my hand yesterday. It's a
So
salmon
nice.
pink bird eater, and she is a hefty 7, 8 inches. She is intimidating to me. I'm not just gonna sit here and be like, yeah, we're great. Like she she's going to be a fun one to move and get into her forever enclosure. But I think the coolest part about owning tarantulas, I also own ball pythons, snakes, and I have friends who are absolutely obsessed with snakes, thanks to me. Oops. But that's a whole nother spiral. So I think the coolest part about those animals and creatures that people immediately have the ill response is you are always going to be afraid of something you don't understand. And I was guilty of that. And the only way I got into tarantulas was I was handed one at a reptile expo and figured, okay, I need to learn about this thing. And that obviously transpired to me owning the amount that I do now. Um, but now that I understand them, there's a respect for them. And I still do get the heebie jeebies when they move a way that I don't necessarily expect. That's never going to go away. But as far as seeing it and wanting it dead on site, that's absolutely not the case anymore. So that's the cool thing about, going at your own pace. I wasn't forced. I mean, I kind of was forced into a tarantula, but I wasn't forced into what it's become. So
Yeah.
I think that's the cool part about the hobby of reptiles and invertebrates and whatnot is you really get educated and start to have a compassion for things that most of society is just like, no, absolutely not. Ew. and
Yeah, I mean,
and
I
I get to
definitely
share
was
it.
right. Like I never expected to walk into a room full of tarantulas, which I did in
Yeah.
January when I came to visit you. But I think they're fascinating.
Yeah.
And to your point, like they're just misunderstood. Like,
Completely.
you know, I mean, I that even equates to, I mean, I might, you and I are in like top level animal lovers. So,
Yes,
like
yeah.
the prairie dogs here in Colorado, like a lot
Mhm.
of people see them as a nuisance,
Yes.
because, and at one point it was said that they carried the plague, and I was like, well, leave them alone, and you don't have to worry about them carrying the
Right.
plague. And like they're so known as a nuisance, and their home is disappearing here in Colorado, and that breaks my heart to the point that Elena saw one the other day and she was like, "Is that a squirrel?" Because she had never seen one because there's so
Yeah.
few. But it's just people not understanding that like they were here first. And we have a huge tarantula population, I think in
Yep.
southern Colorado. And
Something
every
that'll really
year,
terrify you is the
right?
stampede of tarantulas looking for a mate.
Right.
And a lot
What's
of people
funny
don't know about
is
that.
I don't know anyone who's actually seen that migration. So every year in Colorado, it's all over TikTok and YouTube
Mhm.
and everywhere else. Like it's the tarantula migration time and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know anybody who's like out and about and just seeing these thousands of tarantulas, but
Yeah.
it is part of Southern Colorado. Um, but it's just like you said, just a matter of being afraid of things that we don't understand, that we don't comprehend. And I think your tarantulas are so cool. I do not plan to own any anytime.
Yeah.
Mostly because the knowledge that you have to properly care for them, like the knowledge that you have of how they act, what they need, what to look for to keep them healthy, like that's a whole different, it's not just an animal that you can go out and grab and throw in a
Yeah.
tank and call it a day. So I
Some
think that's
people
important to
do,
note
but yeah.
too. Ugh. Yeah, just like
As
some
with
people throw their
any animal
dogs
in
in
the
the
pet trade.
backyard. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, there's
exactly.
always a different level of effort, but I think,
Yeah.
yeah, you're completely right. I mean, I have friends that have come around and been in that room with several tarantulas, and going in, obviously, they're very hesitant, nervous. Granted, that's completely normal. And then by the end of it, I think they're a little bit inspired, like, oh my gosh, like I did that. Like I was in a room full of tarantulas and nobody died. So
Right.
that's it's a cool
Yeah.
feeling to get, people inspired and educated and excited about something that they definitely didn't know anything about before. So that's the cool
Oh,
part about what I do, dog training and owning pets. And just that's what really gets me going, is inspiring people and making them intrigued or just feeling confident about things beforehand they necessarily weren't. So it's very
yeah.
rewarding.
And this year we're going to get your online platform going and online training and resources. It's going to happen. I'm telling you this year.
We're going
But
worldwide.
yes, to your point about I backing up a ways when you were talking about pet sitting,
Mhm.
to the point of like, I'm flying you here in October to watch my
Yeah.
animals and my child. So
Yep.
there's, there's a big movement too to people just becoming pet sitters
Yeah.
because they have an animal. So I think definitely you add that extra level of security, like beyond the fact that my kid loves you because she's gonna be you in
And I love her.
25 years.
Yeah.
But my pets, like I have had a huge issue here finding people that I trust with my pets. I mean, I
Yeah.
came home once to my two male cats locked in the bathroom and my bathroom destroyed and a candle lit on my stove still. Like terrifying shit. Absolutely
Yeah.
terrifying. So,
Yeah.
also just a like PSA, if you can find a reputable trainer to also take care of your animals, then yes,
That's a
100%
big
yes.
plus. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
all are capable of offering different services. I don't board dogs in my home yet. But that is a service that some dog trainers do offer. And I would much rather my dog be in a home with my trusted trainer than a facility necessarily. I mean, some facilities, they all
Totally.
vary. Pet industry, unfortunately, like I said, you can't generalize the pet industry. There's just a lot of things that we are constantly needing to grow on our knowledge and our care and our just understanding. I mean, the vet field, daycares, um, boarding facilities, like you name it. There are so many areas that we are constantly getting more and more educated about as far as dog behavior. And I think that's a great thing that we are prioritizing that. And that's
Yeah.
that's a big thing that we are struggling with, is dog trainers and veterinarians getting on the same page as far as behavior meds. So like you talked about anxiety. That's a
Yeah.
huge one, because there's only 97 veterinary behaviorists in the United States. And that
Oh,
that is a scary thought. Your general vet doesn't necessarily get the training and schooling to know what meds work best for certain disorders. So that's a big thing that we're really, really in dire need of expansion on.
yeah. Well, I know you and I could literally talk for hours
Yep.
about animals and training and everything else,
Oh
but
yeah.
is there anything else that you want the audience to know? How you can also let us
Yeah.
know where they can follow you on social media to stay up to date on things, but like anything else of people that might want to connect with you, things
I
like
mean, I love hearing from new people, and I can be reached on Facebook. My Facebook is, I believe it's Better Pups Dog Training on Facebook, if you search that. My website is betterpupsdogtraining.com. I have Instagram, and that's Better Pups DFW. And so I'll post more on my Instagram, little videos and tidbits here and there. But yeah, typically if it's a question, I do little consultations, small fees if it's just a here and there question, and we can pretty much knock it out in a reasonable manner. And I think it's a really good source to have a trainer who's knowledgeable with resources to reach out to versus a Google search. So that's
totally.
one thing a lot of people hesitate with, the money part, but it's an investment. On once you know it, you can't not know it. And I think that that's priceless. So that's kind of how I work. And if you want to reach out to me and if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to connect. So,
Cool.
like we said, virtually we can make it happen. You would be
Yeah,
surprised.
right. Right. And I will link your website and all your social media
Sounds
platforms
good.
in this episode when it is live. But yeah, I want to thank you so, so much for being my
Yeah.
first guest on your next business bestie. I'm super, super excited. This has been a long time coming. For
Yes.
everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in to Your Next Business Bestie. This podcast is all about connecting you with entrepreneurs and other badass people that I just think you should know, either for their story or their service or both. If you are interested in finding out more about what I do or being a guest on the show, you can head over to jensway.com. All of that will be linked as well. But otherwise, I will see you next time on Your Next Business Bestie. Have a great day.